Okay.
Welcome to Timeless Mysteries. Please like and subscribe if you're drawn to tales of dark psychology, twisted crimes, and the fine line between man and monster. You're in the right place. Hey guys, what's up?
Hey.
I don't see the chat anywhere.
I see it.
Here
so
we go.
we've got
I found it. Hi, Maribel. Hi, Lauren. Hi, Lindy. So I'm just going to wait another minute or two before we get started here in case some other people show up.
Looking fancy in your suit. Yep.
Yeah.
Rabbit holes here, one of my favorites.
Hey, rabbit hole.
I met Lauren through Zawoki's page.
So did you guys like my intro?
Yeah, it was fast. I don't know why I thought that was going to be the 8-minute one, but no.
No, that was well, did you know who was talking?
Who was talking?
I'm going to kill you. That was the Golden State Killer.
Oh, yes.
Joseph D'Angelo. He would call people up and talk like that before he would go to their house.
How creepy.
That guy is scary. All right, guys. I guess we'll go ahead and get started.
Let's do it.
See if I can do this.
And bear with us. It's our first time going live together, so we're kind of working out the kinks of all of this.
All right. All right.
Rob's got to get it.
Timeless Mysteries live stream edition. If you're catching the replay, thanks for watching. Let's go ahead and get started. What if a single scoop of ice cream foreshadowed a family's annihilation? How could a simple pistachio become a symbol for murder? These questions still haunt the true crime community as it continues to dissect one of the most chilling cases in recent history, the murders committed by Chris Watts himself. In August of 2018, Watts murdered his pregnant wife, Shanann, and their two daughters, Bella and Cece, in a crime that stunned the nation. As investigators and internet sleuths searched for answers, one theory emerged that's equal parts dark irony and tragic allegory. The Nut case. I mean, the Nutgate.
It is
This term refers to a bitter family feud that unfolded just weeks before the murders. And it centered around little Cece's severe nut allergy and a tense confrontation between Shanann and Chris's mother, Cindy. Both, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Some believe it marked a turning point in Chris's unraveling. Others say it's nothing more than an internet-fueled distraction. But the details are eerie. Chris allegedly brought nuts to work on the day of the murders. Online conspiracies even implicate his parents. So, is Nutgate a key to understanding what pushed Chris over the edge? Or is it just a desperate attempt to make sense of the senseless? Cece Watts was extremely allergic to tree nuts. This was not a minor food sensitivity, but a documented medical condition so serious that Cece was prescribed an EpiPen for emergencies. Everyone in the family knew of the allergy. Shanann had made a point to warn all of her friends and relatives to avoid giving Cece anything that contained nuts. This wasn't overprotectiveness on Shanann's part. It was literally life and death. Celeste had already experienced allergic reactions, and Shanann lived in constant vigilance to keep her toddler safe. Imagine the stress of parenting a child who could stop breathing from one wrong snack. Shanann, ever the organized mother, sent both her and her own mother a uh, she Shanann sent both her own mother and her mother-in-law, Cindy, a list of approved nut-free foods before their planned summer trip in 2018. By all accounts, Shanann took Cece's allergies with the utmost seriousness. Did everyone else? Tension brewed beneath the surface. The Watts family dynamic was already strained before any nut ever entered the picture. Shanann confided to her friends that her mother in law, Cindy, never liked her and often undermined her parenting. Indeed, it's also noted in police discovery files that Chris's parents did not even attend his wedding to Shanann. That's a telltale sign of a long standing rift. On the other side, Cindy and Ronnie Watts, Chris's father, felt Shanann was too controlling of Chris and the kids. This was the powder keg into which an unlikely match was struck. The pale green pistachio ice cream, an innocuous treat to most, became the unlikely flashpoint for a ferocious family feud. In July 2018, Shanann traveled from Colorado to North Carolina with Bella and Cece to visit extended family for about 5 weeks. Part of that trip included a visit to Cindy and Ronnie Watts' home. What happened during that visit has since been dubbed Nutgate. According to a detailed letter Shanann's friend wrote to prosecutors, and it's now part of the case discovery, Shanann walked into her mother in law's kitchen to a horrifying sight. Cindy Watts was about to give the girls ice cream that contained nuts. Did Cindy forget about Cece's allergy, or did she simply not believe it was real? Shanann immediately asked, alarmed, if the ice cream had nuts. Cindy's reply was nonchalant and a little defiant. Yes, just a little, she said. To Shanann, this was not just a little of anything. This was her child's life. When Shanann snatched the bowls away and said to the girls they couldn't eat it, Cindy persisted, trying to hand the bowls back to the toddlers. Incredibly, Cindy told the little girls, "Oh, your mommy doesn't know what she's talking about. This ice cream won't hurt you." It's hard to overstate Shanann's fury and fear in that moment. Her mother-in-law was directly contradicting her and downplaying a well-documented lethal allergy. Was this simply a grandmother in denial or a more malicious act of defiance? Shanann later characterized it to her friends as if Cindy was trying to kill her child. That's how dangerous and deliberate it felt to her. The confrontation exploded. Shanann's voice, raised with shaking angry, accused Cindy of killing her child. The scene devolved into a shouting match right in front of the wide-eyed children, who were so scared that Shanann's young nephew told Bella to go hide, fearing that she might not ever be allowed to come back to Grandma's house again. In the heat of the argument, Cindy's daughter, Chris's sister, came into the kitchen and astonishingly set a bowl of actual nuts on the table right in front of Cece. Shanann snapped, asking, "Why on earth would you do that?" The sister coolly responded, "We always have nuts on the kitchen table." It was as if the family was thumbing their noses at Shanann's warnings. At this point, Shanann had seen enough. Shaking with tears, she gathered her daughters and abruptly left the in law's house, calling the environment unsafe. She even called her own father to come pick her and the girls up immediately, refusing to stay in the house another minute. In the aftermath of this ice cream altercation, emotions ran hot on all sides. Shanann blasted her mother in law on Facebook, venting in a public post about a caregiver endangering a child with allergies, though she did it without actually naming Cindy, but it was obvious to anyone who knew the family who gave the nuts to her daughter. Shanann told her friends she would never allow Cindy to see the kids again if she could help it. In her view, Cindy had betrayed the most basic trust of keeping her grandchildren safe. From Cindy's perspective, Shanann was overreacting and attacking her over a trivial issue. Cindy reportedly dismissed Shanann's concerns as overprotectiveness, insisting Shanann was just being dramatic about the allergy. Was Cindy truly ignorant of the gravity of anaphylaxis, or was there an element of passive aggression in her actions? Perhaps she felt that Shanann's strict rules were a challenge to her authority as a grandmother and rebelled in a dangerously careless way. Regardless of motive, the result was a total relational breakdown. Shanann left the Watts' home in fury, and in the days that follow, she cut off in the contact entirely with her in-laws. This schism was painfully apparent for a few days later at Cece's birthday party. She turned 3 on July 17th. And they were there in North Carolina still. But despite being invited, Cindy and Ronnie did not attend their granddaughter's birthday. They were effectively uninvited in Shanann's mind, and they apparently felt it best to stay away after the blow-up. They mailed Cece a present to the house instead, and Shanann had a friend return it to sender unopened. By late July, with the birthday snub and the Facebook jabs, the Nutgate feud had solidified into entrenched camps. Shanann was infuriated and done trying with her in-laws. The Watts grandparents felt vilified and refused to apologize. At the time of the murders in mid-August, this conflict was still unresolved. And that is my introduction, guys. That is the story that we have here. I also want to welcome Jennifer here from Crafted Evidence. She's joining me today, and we're going to talk about this aspect of the case. I guess the big question is, could this incident have pushed Chris Watts over the edge and led to the murders of his family?
We already have a lot of chatter about, was the nut allergy real?
As far as I can tell, it was real.
Well, we see the photos of Shanann, she documented everything. We see the doctor photos of Cece's back where she's having a reaction. But I'm seeing also mixed things online about the Thrive bars containing nuts. And
I actually wondered about that too.
I reached out to Lavelle and asked them to comment if, I mean, you can Google the label and it does say tree nuts, soy tree nuts.
But is it in all of them? I guess
it was in the birthday cake Thrive bars, which they would go live together and promote them and have a bite. So that's where I wonder if Jamie and Cindy thought she doesn't really have a nut allergy and we're going to prove it by giving maybe the kids something with a little bit in it to see what happens.
But if a doctor gave her an EpiPen, that means there's some allergy there. Maybe it's not specific nuts, but there was some sort of allergy for sure.
Do we know I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Do we know that the EpiPen was prescribed by a doctor? Because people will send things, you know, how you start to get into these cases and people send it to you, that the EpiPen was bought used online, which would be illegal.
Yeah, that
But
is illegal. But actually, now that you mentioned that, whenever I was researching this, um, I did see like a message from one of her friends saying, "I'll give you a EpiPen."
exactly. So
And I
people
thought that was a little weird. Why would a friend
are,
need to give her an EpiPen when she could get one from the doctor?
well, I'm sure they're expensive. And we know that, you know, they had some financial hardships. However, exactly what you said is what I was going to bring up. And, you know, I don't want to talk negatively about Shanann, but I also want to talk about the facts out there. And we will never know if that pen was prescribed because the medical records were so quickly to be sealed for the
Hmm.
girls. And I found that a little odd. And I'll tell you, on Reddit, some people feel that the allergies and the lupus may have been a part of this pitch for Thrive to say, I take Thrive now and everything's better for me. But
Yeah,
that's a far fetch to be, you know,
I think so.
EpiPens. Okay. Someone's telling us they're about $200 and they're good for a year.
They are definitely good for a year. I, I've I've seen, people need to get new ones. I was a pharmacy tech for a long time.
I was too. I never filled an EpiPen though, just medication.
Yeah, they
Um,
would have to get a new one. They would be going on trips, and my old one's about to expire. I think an expired one would probably work, but you'd never know for sure, so
right.
you'd
Would
want
you
to.
take that risk? Um, you know, looking back, you mentioned Shanann's post on Facebook, and I'll read just like a little bit of that. And she says, on July 9th, I need to vent to people who understand. My 2.5-year-old is severely allergic to all tree nuts. We're visiting the in laws. So she did call them out. I didn't remember that. So she calls them out. I specifically said we can't have them in the house when we stay. My mother in law stated we don't buy them. I specifically mentioned the ones she is deathly allergic to as well. I arrived, and on the floor shelf of her center island was a bag of pistachios, a big one. I removed immediately. Today, she lets her other granddaughter eat ice cream that has all tree nuts in front of my 2.5-year-old. That can't have them. I said I didn't appreciate it, and I removed my daughter. Her response was that she had to learn she can't always get what she wants. I'm beyond furious, and she's telling me I'm overreacting when my child's life is at risk. So that was her post on July 9th.
So I'm trying to find some actual sources that suggest that she was prescribed an EpiPen.
Someone in the
'Cause
chat,
I swear I saw it somewhere, and maybe it was in, maybe it
while
was just
you're looking,
something that Chris said in that
right.
document.
And then I have some sound we'll play here in a minute. While you're looking for that, um, I'll kind of just go back into the chat. Obviously, people reacted to Shanann in her post, and someone thought, maybe is it because Cindy's older? Is she maybe not taking it as seriously? And Shanann says, yeah, she's young, only 60. She completely understands. My husband called her after he got off work, told her he didn't appreciate how she handled this situation, and teasing my 2-year-old with ice cream and putting her at risk to exposure. She also has asthma. Her response to my husband was, This is a learning experience for my 2-year-old to realize she can't get what she wants. F you. That's the first time I've seen this post, back and forth with a friend. So she was mad. I've seen a lot of people say that Cindy didn't care about the grandchildren. And how did you feel at the impact statement with no emotion for the grandchildren?
I don't know. It sounds like what you read, it kind of actually sounds more like there was just nuts around and that she wasn't specifically giving the bowl of ice cream to Cece to eat.
Right. It's for the cousin.
And if that is true, then Shanann totally overreacted. You know, I've got a couple of friends who have kids with severe allergies, and like even if you touch an egg and then you touch their arm afterwards, they like start swelling up.
Have a
Like
reaction.
yeah. But I don't know that if somebody eats some ice cream and then picks up the kid, it's gonna be the same thing, you know, because the eggshell's not on their fingertips, you know, the nuts aren't gonna be on their hands. So it may have been a little bit of an overreaction.
Cindy said in one of her interviews that Shanann and her actually went shopping. I believe it was the Friday she arrived, and they spent over $300 on groceries. So you see this two sides to the story, and you really don't know which one is true. I mean, you know that they're saying, show the receipts. Cindy, show me the receipts.
Mhm.
I know for a fact Ronnie loved those kids. He followed Shanann's Facebook page, and even Frankie Rusick said every time Shanann posted something, Ronnie was on it, posting, encouraging, saying something. I know Cindy was on Facebook, but he didn't mention how she was as a grandmother.
Yeah. You know, the one thing that kind of bothered me also was the way the sister just brought in the nuts like it was no big deal. And I don't know, once now that I've heard what you just shared from that text message back and forth with her friend, it's like, well, maybe it wasn't what she thought, and she was being just dramatic. Because like the woman could have just brought in the nuts, like not even knowing that there was a child there, with this allergy, and they were probably still closed up and not like open and like right in front of the child who could just
Right.
reach down and grab some and start, you know, dying right there. But
I almost feel like maybe they didn't believe Shanann, and they were willing maybe to prove that the kids weren't allergic, as she said. I can't imagine exposing your niece and taking the risk to prove that. I do want to share some audio with Nicole Kessinger talking about the nut allergies. So this kind of just proves how close Chris and Nicole were, because man, I get peeved when I watch these police interviews where she acts like he is just, not that important, when they were talking about building a life together. So if you're ready, Rob, I'm going to play this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Talking about building a life together. Oh, we got a little.
If it's that, actually, I think I could share it on the screen.
Allergy and enough to carry an EpiPen. That's pretty severe. Yeah. While we're on this, so when he was in North Carolina,
Let me see if I can share it on the screen.
this is all
Is it the
now because it's like
one you shared with me?
he's telling me this stuff. But
it's in the folder. Do you have access
Yeah,
to it?
yeah. Just go ahead and pause it. I think I could play it.
Yeah, we'll let Rob pull it up so it's a little easier to hear. So this, clearly they were close enough to
a pretty severe allergy and
enough to carry an EpiPen. That's pretty severe.
Yeah. While we're on this, so when he was in North Carolina, this is all like hearsay now because it's like, this is not a conversation. Like, he's telling me this stuff, but who knows exactly what happened. But he went out there to go see his family and her family. And while he was in town, before he went out to North Carolina, I guess his mother had accidentally, like, not exposed her to something with nuts, but had, like, given a product, I think it was like ice cream, to a different kid that could have traces of nuts or something. I don't know. But it was like, his daughter was fine, but she was like in the range of contamination. And I think his wife was very upset about that. I don't know what's true and what's not, but I just know that there was like some tension there. And again, like that part.
She thinks, no, you know, Nicole, clearly you know the details of what's going on here.
Yeah, she knows a lot. And
She does.
yeah. I know, didn't you make a video on like the 40 things that
Oh gosh,
like,
you know what? The 40 most awkward moments. And I got to tell you, it was hard to pick 40 because there are just so many pieces to those interviews. And every time you watch the interviews, you hear something you didn't hear before.
well, there's like, 3 or 4 hours. It's hard to hear everything and remember everything that was said in the same, if you're looking for information specifically, you'll find it and it'll resonate with you a little different
Definitely.
as well.
And
But what about these other conspiracy theories regarding this Nutgate thing? I've read some stuff that there are people who suspect Cindy encouraged Chris to poison his kids, basically. There's no evidence of it at all. It sounds like, somebody just wants another person to blame to me. And so it's just a rumor. But they were in North Carolina when the family was murdered.
right.
And the police have never suggested any accomplices, even, Nicole Kessinger, who a lot of people suspect might have known something. I can believe that more than I can believe that a grandparent, even one like Cindy, would ever
Right.
like intentionally try to harm somebody. So if she was testing CC to see if she actually was allergic, she should have went about it a lot different. She should have, did something different instead of just like nonchalantly give some pistachio ice cream to a kid that can't have it.
Right.
And it's
It
kind of
makes
crazy.
me wonder because Shanann ended up having to call her dad to pick her up. She didn't have a car there and she was planning to stay there with the Watts and messaged her dad, in a panic. It makes me wonder if things were so blown up, why wouldn't Frank have gone inside and try to assess the situation and see what's going on? It sounded more like he waited outside and she loaded the kids up and they left.
Yeah. It's hard to say. I can see it from both sides. Like I could see a mother-in-law like being like, well, I don't think my grandkid's really allergic. I'm just going to see what happens.
Right.
And if there was anybody who's possibly going to be able to do that, it would be somebody like Cindy Watts. I think my grandmother is actually a lot like that lady, very stubborn,
Well,
very opinionated, very strong-willed person.
in the older generation, they didn't know about allergies and things like this. So, but like Shanann said, she was in her 60s, so she's not 80, where I can see an 80-year-old grandmother being like, oh, she's, old. Someone just wrote the word old school. Exactly. Like that old school, and I deal with it as a mom with a child on the spectrum. There's an older generation that doesn't believe autism is a real thing, and it's, you deal with that. So I don't think Cindy was that old school. But you got Jamie in on it too in this situation. I'm looking at the chat here, and I just want to, add something. We have Mirabelle who says Cindy also kicked Shanann out of the house that day and then left herself. I forgot. I do believe she did kick her out.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing something like that too. But they were already always fighting. So
Yes.
if you think about it, if you can detach yourself completely from the situation and you could like imagine yourself being Shanann coming to this house, you'll be able to like go into the house without any like, assumptions of what she's doing and why she's doing them. But Shanann couldn't. She walked into the house already with assumptions things were going to go bad,
Yeah.
already thinking that they were going to fight about something. She just didn't know what,
She was
and
dreading.
yeah. So, I mean, there's that. Things could have just blown up because it was already going to blow up because they always blow up when they're together. And it started, I think, with when she missed the wedding. Like, that's a pretty big thing.
So the wedding, I'm not sure if you know the backstory. I also, by the way, just sent you the link that we can listen to, that you can play of Chris talking about Nutgate here in a moment. But the wedding, the invitations for a shower were supposed to be sent out. They were throwing Shanann a shower, and they claim that people were not RSVPing to come. And then only family showed up to that shower, which made Shanann angry. So that kind of started all of it. And then that is why they decided not to go to the wedding. You already got this tension building up to the wedding. And then I just cannot believe them not putting one day aside and being there for their son.
People are stubborn. People are so stubborn for the dumbest reason. It seems so logical to the people who are, in that conflict, but to everyone else, it's just insanity.
Right. And then years later, they have children and they're able to put the past aside, right, and move forward and get together and rent beach houses and go to the beach together. So it's, like you said, no matter whether they put the differences aside, there's a history there. And Shanann was always going to go back to that. And Chris was always going to stand up for his wife. Just checking out, the comment section. We have someone who said, my mom didn't go to my brother's wedding.
I'm sure there was a valid reason, right?
We got some people asking about that oxycodone, where Chris got it from, and saying
well, if you think about who's going to be most likely taking pain medication, it's going to be an older person, and most.
Well, also Shanann did have her own pain medication from getting that neck surgery.
Yeah, but she probably would have taken it all, and their doctor probably wouldn't have given it to her for more than a couple of months.
Right.
They're very strict on that stuff nowadays.
A lot of people speculate Jamie, being a nurse, had access to it. But then, of course, we all think right away.
Those meds are locked up. There's no way a nurse could snag a pill or two.
No. After going through chemo, I unfortunately have to take that myself every day. And I go to a pain doctor and you count the pills, and it's I will say this. I have to take it about 3 times a day. So that's 30 milligrams. And I've been on that for some time. If he really gave her 80 milligrams, there's no way she wouldn't have been in the ER. So I still wonder.
I don't think he drugged them. Just off of the autopsy reports, there's not any drugs.
Right.
There's no drugs in the system. There was ethanol or alcohol or something, but that was I looked it up, and it's actually the body starts breaking down when you
Decompos
die, and it kind of produces that
Eth
yep, and because it's not such a high amount, they could tell it's not alcohol. But if you don't know that and you read through it, it kind of looks like maybe she was drinking alcohol.
yeah.
But
Mary in the comments saying that Jamie slipped up and said that she gave it to him. And I'm talking about when they were in North Carolina. Definitely without a fact, we know he didn't give it to her the day of August 13th, but we know he gave it to her in North Carolina. He said he blended it up in a Thrive Shake so that she would have no idea. And Frankie Rusick Jr. said she was violently ill all night the first day Chris arrived. And she just thought, she's pregnant. She's having, she doesn't.
I think she would know she was drugged. If she was nauseous because there was too much, of the oxycodone,
Yeah.
because that
Well,
will make you if
it,
you don't take it and you take too much of it, it will make you sick.
yeah.
So that could happen. But I think if she had neck surgery, she's taken pain meds before she would recognize something's not right.
Yeah. She knows what it feels like. And someone mentioned, she may have had a better tolerance for it. Yes. And I always go back to the fact that it is hard for me to imagine he didn't give the kids or Shanann something that day or that night, because we know he's a coward and would try to make it as easy as possible. So then it, makes me go down this rabbit hole of were the kids initially a part of the plan or not. I know we're getting away from Nutgate now, but
Yeah.
someone in the
Well,
comments
let's play this video
yeah,
clip.
play that video of Chris talking
Well,
about.
I think I could play the video clip. Let me see.
Someone's
Well,
bringing up the fact that Nicole Kessinger called a clinic. Have you heard that theory?
the what?
There's a theory out there that Kessinger called a clinic, a pain clinic, to see how much was safe to take while pregnant. Now,
See,
I don't
if
know
they're
if
saying that she actually called a clinic, I
it was
would say
phone right.
that I don't
And
believe it. But if it was a web history, like a browser search or something,
it's a phone call. But
yeah, I don't think she would. I just don't. I don't see the logic in somebody doing that. Like, especially she's not really there with the family,
right.
so she
Not
wouldn't.
plan, but if we're going down the path of she was involved, I have to be honest, and I don't know how you feel, Rob, but I have to think the CBI investigated Nicole and is not giving us all of the details. And
Yeah, I kind of
they
think
don't.
the same thing. I think they knew whatever she did. I don't think she was actually participating in the murder. Like the video footage that people keep showing me of like two people at the truck, I don't believe it's real. I think it's fake because it zoomed way in and none of the old stuff from like 2019
has
show
that
it.
video, has that clip. And
I mean, it has the whole 3 hours or whatever it is, but you never see anybody else. I mean, maybe you couldn't see it because it's not zoomed in. So, I mean, there's part of me that kind of like maybe 10% of me thinks that maybe, but if for me personally, I don't think she was like an active participant. I don't think she was out digging holes, but I think she probably knew something. Like Chris made comments like, I'm going to do this and I'll show you that because I'm going to do this or something. Somehow it came up. They argued about it. She didn't think it was legitimate, and then he murdered his family. But I just can't. I don't know.
The pressure on.
Yeah. But I think that whenever she got interviewed, they may have deleted part of that from the public record where she mentioned where he said he was going to do it or something. And then they may have initially put her in some kind of protection just to get her out of the public eye, but then she's been maintaining it herself the whole time. Because if you go into witness protection or protection, because you don't have to be a witness
Right. 'Cause
necessarily.
it doesn't qualify for witness protection.
Well, federal witness protection is a federal program, and it involves organized crime and actually testifying. But there's other programs that are similar to that, and it's done through the prosecutor's office, the state, or even, I mean, I guess it could be federal also, but it's done through the state, and they could have helped her hide, because I keep hearing that she's still in Colorado and that she's not in witness protection, but something she knew, I don't know. There's some reason that they believe that she wasn't involved. And I don't think it's just because of the guy thought she was attractive. So he let her go. Like I've heard that too.
Oh, God.
But anyway, let's play this
Yeah.
Nutgate thing.
Nutgate?
Are you guys able to see that?
Yeah.
Peanut.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
Rewind it.
Nutgate?
what's that?
The peanut? The peanut?
Oh, yeah. Oh, with her family?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Pistachio ice cream or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, they
Nutgate.
call it nut.
I haven't heard that.
I haven't heard that either.
Yeah, I guess what people are calling it.
Okay.
But that was like another out. Like, maybe I could have just like stopped everything with Nikki and just kind of concentrated on helping like whatever happened there. Because
Okay.
like, Shannon had a story, my mom had a story. Like, whatever happened, I probably asked my 10-year-old nephew. Probably can tell me what actually happened.
Well, and they both have their feelings for good reasons, and they both didn't see it the other person's way. And
Yeah, and like maybe I didn't talk to my parents from then on until like August 6th, and like my dad took that whole week off.
That
your parents?
comment right there is very
Oh,
important.
Okay.
Because like Shannon was like, do not talk to them, do not call them, do not do anything.
Is that what she said?
Yeah, and the Cece's birthday was 17th, but I think the actual birthday party was like a couple days after,
In August?
July.
July?
And like my mom or my dad was gonna go, but then there was like a post on Facebook about allergies and stuff like that Shannon made. My
Dad was
can't do it anymore.
he wasn't.
He perceived that as her taking a shot type thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
She always says she never, put those posts directed at anybody, but she had a method.
If you read them, you know who she's
Yeah.
talking about.
She had a method to the madness, and
His mother-in-law on the post, though.
but I wish I could have just took more time just to fix that. Because like I wanted my parents to be involved, like since like the whole wedding thing, and then up to that, it was like my mom, and my sister were always like combating with Shan combating with them. My dad was always cool. Like, he's just like me. He's just like go with the flow. Like I just want everybody to get along type deal.
Chicks,
I
man.
loved your dad.
Oh, he's the best.
Isn't he? I
So,
loved your dad.
I'm sorry, keep going.
That's cool. I just wish I could have just when we were in the beach in August. Let's take to the whole week off just so we could see the kids, see me, like we have a cookout at my sister's house or something. And then, but we just pretty much spent 5 days at the beach, and Shannon like booked it so like
Don't they just
it's
the
I don't
best?
say, like punishment for them not to see the kids, but like I wanted them to see it, see them. I wish I could have fixed it all, fixed all that. And I even like when I was at the beach, I told Shannon that it was more like what was going on was more like I feel like because my dad's my hero. I feel like I've lost like something in my life. I haven't been talked to him for 3 weeks. And I've been seeing the kids for 3 weeks, on FaceTime or anything. And I wanted them to be able to have that relationship.
So I'm just going to go ahead and stop it there. But
Yeah.
I think it's really important that Chris wasn't allowed to talk to his family. And, he's brought it up at least 2 or 3 times in that short amount of time there, how it affected him.
Yes.
And whenever I was looking into the Nutgate thing, at first all I saw was the conspiracy theories about how the Cindy Watts was somehow involved in trying to kill the kids and yada, yada, yada. And I've never believed that. And I've never actually looked into this because I thought it was just a bunch of hooey. you know.
Right.
But what I've discovered since actually going through some of this stuff is that Chris Watts, he is going through something in his life, and he's got all these stressors that they're just building up, you know. And so when this happened, and he's not allowed to talk to his family, you know, that just like builds more tension. You know,
Yep.
it's just more stuff piling on that he can't handle. And he's saying, "Oh, you know, I wish I would have done this." And if he had, you know, if he had tried to straighten it out, if he had just went ahead and talked to his family, none of this may have happened. And I
Yeah.
think that's the real story of Nutgate. It may have been the final feather that broke the camel's back, you know.
Agreed.
It,
Agreed. It in one of the letters Shanann wrote to Chris, she hand wrote a letter. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but it must have been while she was in North Carolina, and they were, you know, growing apart, and she wrote, "You haven't been this cold to me since," or maybe it was after he arrived in North Carolina, and she decided to write it while they were together just because he was off doing his own thing. But it said, "You haven't been this cold to me since the wedding." Now you can tell, like you said, every time there's some type of situation with his family and they're separated, he brings that up a lot too. He said he was so angry that morning that they were being kept away from him, or he was being kept away from them, that he couldn't take
well,
it anymore.
here's the thing. He was an adult.
Right.
Nobody can force him not to talk to his parents.
Right. Grow
You
up.
know, he could have just talked to them anyway. You know, yeah, Shanann, you don't want to talk to them, but they're my parents. I still have to talk to them.
Right.
Simple. Boom. You know, and he didn't do that. He allowed that control. And I've actually talked about this in a couple of the videos I've done on him, how he kind of manipulates the manipulators. Like he allows them to manipulate him, but then he like strategically, like, you know, makes things happen so that that conflict between his mother and his wife, like, you know, they start fighting and he gets to do whatever he wants, you know. I think he kind of allowed those conflicts to happen on purpose as a way of, like, you know, he could stay away from his mother whenever he wanted because, you know, he has to make Shanann happy. Eh,
You do see that, you know, when Chris moved away for college, and this is before Shanann was in the picture, you know, that the story about Ronnie being into drugs for a while because he was so depressed that Chris left.
People get into drugs for a lot of things,
The
and then
fact
whenever they stop doing drugs, they try to figure out why they did it, and then they go with that. And if it helps them stop doing it, that's great. But I don't believe that he started drugs just because
Chris
he was
left for college.
depressed. Yeah, I don't
But,
believe
but
that.
you
But
would think, man, if you felt guilty about that, I'm pretty sure this is weighing heavy on your dad too. I mean, you did the worst of the worst.
yeah,
You
I don't
their lives.
know. I don't pay attention to a lot of the stuff that's out there, but about Cindy Watts, and I don't see too much of Ronnie Watts because he doesn't like to talk to the camera, you know?
He's low radar like Chris.
Yeah, well, he should, I mean, both of them should have been from the very beginning. Cindy Watts said all these things and people are still talking about it, still angry that she said it.
Yeah.
And I mean, so much time has passed. Maybe she's changed. We don't know.
It is interesting. You know, I've had a lot of people reach out and ask me to reach to the Watts family. I have reached out to the Rusick family because they do YouTube, and not necessarily to talk about the case, but to talk to Sandy. She's got her own YouTube channel. She's a YouTuber herself. I didn't get a response, and that's okay. Maybe they think I am going to talk about the case and they don't want to talk about it. A lot of people have asked me to reach out to the Watts family, and at first I was like, I don't want to. But now I am 6 years later a little interested.
Well, you know, I can't remember who it was. There was another YouTuber who reached out to Cindy Watts,
Oh,
and
Faith.
that blew up. That guy was doing exactly everything he shouldn't have, you
Oh,
know,
you're
and he made her look even more evil and vile than she was. Um, and really, I mean, I don't even know why the original newscasters let her say that stuff. Like they should have known that it's gonna like hurt her reputation and said, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't take this. We shouldn't do this video." But they're all always thinking, "I want to get lots of views," and they did.
well, they
Um,
were abused too. As someone who worked in a newsroom, I mean, this was a small news station in North Carolina. And I'm telling you, the world had their eyes on this case. And we're not talking about watching newscasts. What I did when I worked in local news is I worked in the website. Websites sell ads, and anyone can access this story anywhere in the world from the internet. So, they didn't care whether Cindy looked bad or not. That internet was
exactly.
getting views.
Yeah, they wanted her to
It's still
implode
getting
on camera because it's good for business.
it
And
is.
I people get mad at me and they, why are you sympathizing with her? Well, no matter how evil you think she is, she didn't kill anyone. And, she has good days and bad days like everyone. And
Well,
I don't know, like,
and she looked like a loving grandma. I would say the only thing that bothers me is having no emotion at the sentencing, but maybe she was mentally in denial. You know what I
I
mean?
think she was. I mean, she had to have been. Like,
Find
I
out she
mean, you
did what
you
she
can't process
told.
that stuff immediately. Like
Right.
when it happens, it's impossible. I don't think even if it happened to somebody who's like got a PhD in psychology, they'd be able to, know how to process that information fast and, be fine the next day. It's just not possible. It takes time to process and um, there was a lot of tension. Like she didn't like Shanann, and that's obvious, but that doesn't mean she's a bad person at all.
I mean,
There's plenty of mother-in-laws that hate the daughter-in-law,
right.
invite and other people who hate the husband. It's part of a lot of family dynamics, and it doesn't make her a bad person. And I can attribute everything that she said to processing what happened, that maybe she didn't quite mean it the way she did. But then, like a year or two later, she says something again. And it's like, well, okay, maybe she's just bitter
The
about
guy you're
this one
talking about
person. That doesn't make
was
her evil.
was Armchair Detective, and he actually recently got sued by Frankie Rusick Jr. and he won in the UK. Apparently, it's easier to win those cases versus in the United States. That's the guy who traveled here. I think he's from Australia, or I can't remember where
Was
he's.
he one of the guys who was like
He like
spreading conspiracy theories all the time?
yeah.
What?
I didn't get to see those interviews, and I think they've since been pulled.
I
But
think they're still out there. You can find them. I choose not to watch a lot of that stuff personally, just because
it's
people will say anything.
wonder, is she still to this day reacting the same? Because I think a lot of people don't know that the Watts did not find out what he did in detail until the day before sentencing. So like you said, in a couple hours, you're not going to process that in your mind of
I would
what
say
my
in a
son
couple of
did.
years, you're probably not going
Right.
to process it
So
either.
I'm wondering 6 years later where she is.
Starry, I don't think we're actually talking about we're not actually analyzing Shanann. We're talking
Yeah,
about Cindy Watts at the moment.
about Cindy, but
We're just actually talking about her interviews.
oh no, we're not even talking about Shanann right now. We're talking about Cindy right now. But I mean, Rob and I are very like about what facts and truth are out there. And if there's something out there that's true, like, you know, I don't know about you, but I'm going to lay it out there. And I'm all about truth, you know, and there's a lot of people in this story who were not perfect. So I don't want to act like I'm bashing anyone, but God, I mean, you've got, who doesn't have problems in their life, right? But you've got a perfect storm of people with different personalities that came together in this one.
Yeah, I just feel like somebody should have coached Cindy before she did the interviews, you know? If somebody's going on the jury stand, you know, they get coached by the prosecutor, or if they're for the defense, they'll get coached by the defense too, to know what to say and, you know, how to react, and then they don't get blindsided.
Yeah.
And she was totally blindsided, and she was feeling a lot of feelings, so everything came out, you know, the way it did.
And
I
if you're a parent too.
I don't agree with the things I saw that she said, but I still think she's human, and she could have done things
She could have
differently
handled
if
herself.
she would have got interviewed by the right person, I think.
Well, here's another thing, you know, I want to throw out there too. I think a lot of people have this perception that media pays for interviews. That is not the case, especially in a local news situation.
Don't they just get money from advertising, kind of like we do on
They
Google?
do, but it's not like I'm going
YouTube.
to pay you $5,000 to do a story with me. The type of programs that are going to do that are like Dr. Phil.
Mhm.
But not a news organization. I mean, Good Morning America, something like that might, but
Yeah,
a local
actually,
news
how does
is
a
not
news
dishing money out.
channel get paid? Because it's not like per view like it would be for some YouTubers.
Through ads.
Yeah, well, would they basically have somebody pay thousands of dollars to post an ad, probably,
Yes.
rather than however many people view the ad?
Well,
Or
you
some
get even more advertising online, right? Versus a newscast interview. And you have to think that, I think it was Denver 7 that did that initial interview with her. They're still getting replays of it to this day. 6 years later, there's, you know, the traffic is still there.
Yeah, well, this really is a terrible story, and I think if you look at some of the other family annihilation stories that have, you know, low income families that aren't, you know, middle class, they aren't attractive.
Right.
They don't get the
That
news
coverage.
coverage. This made national news because the way everyone looked, you know, Chris and Shanann and Nicole, they were all attractive people, you know, and
Now,
they,
a lot of people will say it's because Shanann was so present on social media. I don't necessarily think that's true either, because I'm going to tell you, anyone in my Facebook friends list who's selling something, they're on like,
you know, speaking of selling stuff, this
you know,
Thrive thing, what conspiracy theories are out there that this food or whatever, this dietary supplement
the patches.
pushed Chris over the edge? Because I kind of think that, you know, stuff like that could happen for real. Like you could be drinking energy drinks, you know, if you
Yeah.
drink too many of them, you kind of get a little crazy.
Well, that's what the patches were. If you see, he talks about the double patch. There were people that wrote to the Watts family saying, you really need to look at these patches and you need to hire him a good lawyer. And the mom brought it up in one of the prison phone calls. I think I do have that one posted in my on my page. And Chris said, no, Mom, it's not the patches. It's, you know, right away he downplayed it, when honestly that could have been his way to file that appeal if he wanted to.
He can't file an appeal. He gave up those rights.
To do the
He
third.
took a change of plea, and part of that is agreeing to not being able to, you give up all your rights, your right to appeal, your right to like fight the facts of the case and anything that changes. Aside from having another participant, there's no way that guy could ever appeal anything.
Well,
He gave up those
but
rights.
he was able to do the 35C motion, and he had 2 years to do that. And he did speak with a lawyer, but he ultimately decided not to go ahead and file that paperwork.
It's not smart. You know, I think he has a high IQ. I think I read that in his
Yeah, he
in
claims
the
it's 140.
no, I think they gave him like 11 different IQ tests during his
Yeah.
interviews with the CBI and stuff.
I mean, I think that he knows, because the death penalty, we know he wasn't going to get the death penalty, right? Like, Colorado is not, they were already getting rid of it.
Well, even if they got rid of it, if he got the death penalty, I think they could
Before,
have.
that's what I
They
was.
would have. It would have. It would have still.
Would
He
it-
was still got the death penalty if he got charged, sentenced to the death penalty before they ended it. He would most likely still
Right.
get it.
I
think.
and Riding Down the Rabbit Hole just said this. He shows no remorse. Part of me wonders if Chris just didn't want to do this because he knows that he literally has no remorse and doesn't want people to view him in a bad light, and knows he can't fake it, because even the attorneys told him, you need to show more emotion.
Yeah. You know, part of me thinks that he actually feels guilty, and that's why he doesn't fight it. He feels like he should be where he is. And I mean, that could be true. It may not be true. I don't think jail is enough. You know, I think he should be like, you know, stuck in one of those straitjacket chairs things that you see, like Silence of the Lambs, and just like,
Yeah.
you know, be forced to like not do anything for the rest of his life. Then he at least gets to suffer, because this is just horrible. Like, who in their right mind would ever consider this being the right answer for anything? It just it makes me angry still.
I
And
think that's why, 6 years later, we're all still talking about it, because we can't wrap our head around. I was just listening to one of the interviews where they were trying to go locate the girls, and Tammy Lee asks him, "Are we going to find oil in their lungs? Did you put them in there alive?" And he said, "Oh God, no, 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 no." And it was like, whoa,
but
why?
I think they did find oil in one of their
And they
lungs.
did, but he acted like it was such a horrible thing to do. And it's like, Chris, what you did was horrible. So why wouldn't they ask you, did you do this while they were alive? And he's admitted he did this. He killed them twice. I mean,
Yeah.
can't wrap my head around that.
Yeah. If I think too hard about those kids, like I don't like to get emotional, but whenever I write about this thing, I basically don't mention the kids as much as I can because it really bothers me. And that's like the hardest thing about doing true crime is there's a lot of kids in different stories where, you know, even a 16-year-old or an 18-year-old kid, like they're still a kid, you know, and
Yeah.
um, it's just it's hard to process it even secondhand like I have to do. And you know, people who watch it, it's a little different. You don't have to actually internalize it to, you know, process it in your mind so you can, you know, put it out there on the page. Um, but I remember the first time I wrote about the Chris Watts case, and it was like a year and a half ago, and I literally started bawling when I got to the part where the kids died. And then I had to wait 2 days to finish it.
Yeah.
Before I can even go back to it. I just couldn't do it. And you know, when
It's
I talked about the Chris
hard.
Coleman case, I did the same thing. You know, the day before Chris Coleman killed his family, he's out playing catch with his boys. Like, that's just horrible, you know, to think that a person can be like that 1 second and then not. You know, it's like, I mean, I know it, I can logically understand it, but I can't actually understand it. Like, I know that I can't understand it. That's how I understand it, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And it's, it takes you to a dark place. When I read Sherilyn Cale's book, and I read it, on a trial, an audio trial, so it was a freebie. But it just, I am very conditioned to deal with crime from being a former journalist, but it really disturbed me, in the days after reading how detailed he got. And it makes you wonder, he is hiding some things from the author. So, I mean, how much worse can it get?
Well, I don't think anybody who's ever murdered anybody is necessarily ever going to tell the truth about
Right.
anything. Even somebody like Edmund Kemper, who loved to talk about his crimes and loved to talk about his psychological whatevers, had this like crazy understanding of all of that. But was it true? That's something we'll never know, because you can't really go into somebody's mind and find out what is actually valid and not valid.
I
You
always
just have to trust them. But it makes me kind of laugh. Why would I trust a murderer?
Right. I always wonder, what if one day we had the technology to, this is like going Elon Musk out there, if we had the technology to like put a chip in the brain and pull memories out, like you could get a warrant for someone.
They have a movie like that, Final Cut, I think, with Robin Williams.
Is there a movie like that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was, where they put something in their head and it starts recording everything they see, everything.
Well,
Everything, the shower, like their whole entire life.
Could you imagine if you could pull memories from a person that committed a crime? I mean, and then there would be no question. I always wonder what is going to happen here when AI, I mean, it's already a part of our lives, but at some point you're going to start to wonder, what can you and can you not believe to be real and what's AI? And can you set someone up for a crime using AI?
I think if they ever come up with technology to pull a memory, the
Wow.
problem is memories they're not concrete evidence. Like, you can't trust your own memory sometimes. You can go to a party and then somebody could say, well, how many people were wearing red shirts? And then you say, well, I think I saw 5 people wearing a red shirt, but there's only one person there that night that had red shirts. But you remember 5, and they've got studies, like people study this stuff. But the memory is not 100%. It's maybe like 90%. But
it would be interesting though if that
But you should watch that movie, Final Cut. It's about the person who does the final cut for after the person dies. They make a final cut of their entire life. They cut out all of the like showers and like disgusting personal things,
Yeah.
and that's their thing. That's what they do. And I think it was actually a murder story. I can't remember. It's been a while ago, but it was pretty interesting thing. But I think if they ever start putting chips in our brains, they're going to figure out a way to make us all little minions, and we're just going to be slaves.
I bet if there were a way where they put it in and then they had to obtain a warrant to pull your,
God. That could be a fun story to talk. Wouldn't there's
crazy though if you could do that and be like, well, whether you tell me the truth or not, it doesn't matter because we're going to pull it from the
but your memory could be altered. Think about every dream you've ever had.
Right.
Like,
right.
Have you ever it's like sunny one second and then it's raining, but how does it happen like that? One of the AI images that I made a couple months ago, I had a cat parasailing and I was trying to animate it, but its back leg kept turning into its tail, like shifting back and forth. And I'm like, oh my God, that's like a dream. It's doing what happens in our minds when we have dreams, where the actual object just shifts into the wrong thing. And but Yeah.
Well,
Black Mirror. That's a TV show, right? Black Mirror. 12 Monkeys was a time travel movie.
oh yeah, riding down the rabbit hole. I always say that expression, this keeps me up at night. I can't tell you how many times that I have literally lied in bed and thought, you know, could this have happened? Could that, why did he do it? And it literally is keeping you up. You know what I mean? Thinking about what happened and why.
I don't think we'll ever understand why. Not really. Like, even if they could explain, well, you just got too mad, and then boom, it happened. That isn't a good enough reason.
Right.
It's just like with Chris Watts, it's not a good enough that there's only one killer. People have to blame somebody else for pushing him or something, and as I've said many times, I think there was Nicole Kessinger had something. I don't know what. The more I talk about it, the more I don't think she actually did anything like in the way of actually helping, because
Like
6
that.
weeks isn't enough time to help bury a body,
Yeah.
Like I had a friend one time, he had been dating this girl for like 6 years or something. And he said, "Oh yeah, I trust her. She would help me bury a body." And I think about that sometimes whenever I think about this case. Maybe 6 years you could say that, but 6 weeks, I don't know. It just seems not logical. Even if she had mental health issues, it's still like she would have to, I don't know. I don't know what she knew, but I think she knew something, and she might have instigated something. But that doesn't make her guilty.
Murderer. Right. I do wish that, I did 2 videos on this. I've reached out to the district attorney, Michael Rourke, myself twice and do not get a response. And then I reached out to the CBI, did not get a response. And then I ended up, what you do, if you have an issue with the district attorney, is you need to go to the attorney general. So I wrote to them and I said, listen, I started this YouTube channel back up and people just want some answers. Would you guys send an updated release on her not being involved or being involved, or what what more besides the 2,000 pages of discovery is out there and available? And they pretty much kicked it back and said, you need to talk to the district attorney. We're not getting involved with a state case. And I said, well, what happens when the district attorney doesn't respond to me? And they said he's an elected official. And
Yeah,
pretty
you write to the governor next.
do whatever he wants.
Write to the governor. That's a good one.
I've thought about it, but like you said, I've gotten to the point where I don't think she's involved, but I wish they would just release a damn statement and lay everything out there.
Last night I was watching part of one of her interviews, and the guy was like, talking about how she deleted stuff.
Yes.
And he was like, well, I can kind of understand why you did it. I know why you deleted it. I don't like it, but I understand. I can understand she would want to delete it too, but
look at it. And she was angry, upset.
She wasn't angry and upset. She was just kind of nonchalant about it. She was kind of,
she even also felt like I don't want to be involved with it. Maybe if I delete it from my phone, it's not real and I'm not involved. Like out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, but then, we've got our browser history.
Well, I wish they would lay it all out there. I wish that they would, put the conspiracies to rest, because how is the Rusick family supposed to move on and heal if the videos continue? And, a lot of people might criticize us for doing this video or other people doing the videos, but the Rusick family does talk about this case on their own YouTube channel, so I don't feel bad about it. They still talk about it. I feel for them to move on, that some agency, whether it's the Frederick, Colorado Police Department or the CBI, someone needs to give an updated statement and just say, this woman wasn't involved, or
somebody told me that there's some kind of a thing whenever they're, trying to rule out people for a crime. And they called it, I forget what they called it, but some kind of negative thing. Like where you're trying to prove they're innocent rather than prove they're guilty.
right.
There's this thing, I don't know, some kind of balance, like they don't have to necessarily investigate somebody unless there's evidence to investigate somebody. And then if you investigate them without evidence, that's like some there's a term, I can't remember what it is though.
Well, also I think people don't realize Nicole was never interrogated. There was never an interrogation tactics used on her. It was a interview.
Yeah. I don't like how they said, well, I understand why you deleted your stuff. That's just like, okay, you deleted your stuff, we don't care.
I want to know, was everything still on Chris's phone? And I'm assuming yes. So I'm assuming they went through Chris's phone and determined there was no involvement, and that's how she was cleared.
Why don't they say it though?
Right. I just wish they would come out and say it. And for example, there's a theory.
All they have to say is we went through her phone and we decided that the evidence in there is private and she's not involved. Be that simple.
Yeah. Mary brought up that
I imagine people would still talk about her, but
yeah. And there is a theory that yes, the reason the cell phone pinged that morning is because she did drive by the house, because she was trying to see if him and Shanann were having a goodbye kiss that morning or whatever, because during that long 11-minute phone call, it was determined that Chris made a decision. He's ending it and they're going to move forward together. So maybe
I don't think they ever said that though, did they?
Well, we don't know. But
yeah,
if that were the case, maybe she would sneak by and creep by to see if she, saw them saying
I could see her being a clingy. I could see both of them honestly being a clingy person who doesn't want to end things.
And then she pings and is like, shit, they're gonna know I pinged, so I better tell them. Well, okay, yes, I was being a creeper. I drove by to check things out.
I don't know. Then you got like two things. She deleted her crap on her phone and she was there, at least in the neighborhood, cruising by. And then you got to find. I mean, then it's an issue. I can believe that she had some involvement. I can't believe that anybody else would have. And I don't think her involvement is any more than just like the crazy, you better tell her or else, or some ultimatum of some sort. Yeah. And that could have pushed him over the edge. But again, it doesn't make her guilty of anything. She didn't say do it.
Right.
Maybe. I guess she possibly could have said that, but we don't know.
We've got the chat going crazy, Rob.
Yeah. Well, I know how people think about this person.
I'm trying to have faith that the Rusick family is at peace knowing information that we don't know. And that's why they're able to let it go. But I've seen some really crazy theories that the mafia is involved. I mean, I don't know if you've seen it.
Well,
but
my favorite conspiracy theory was that I don't even know if I should say it. It's just complete fiction, but it's like it sounds good. Like it would be a good story for something, but it's not good. Actually, I shouldn't say it at all.
But you get what I'm saying. I mean, sometimes maybe it is just as simple as it is. He's an idiot. He thought he would get away with it, and he thought she'd be okay with it.
Yeah. You know, some people, like Mary just said, that he didn't have time to do it all on his own. I think that's how the children ended up in the oil tanks because he realized he was running out of time.
Well, I also wonder if they were really a part of the plan. Um, and did Bella walk in and screw up his plan? Because someone has said this before. I mean, there's no doubt I do think Chris cared for those kids. He was pretty much a main caretaker um, with them all the time. You have people, friends and witnesses saying this. Um, did she walk in and spoil his plan and then he was
Well,
forced?
I kind of think that is what happened. And I think he kind of said that's what happened at least one time. I know he's changed his story a few
We
times,
are never
but
going to right.
if you research family annihilators, there's certain type of person who thinks they end up thinking that basically they're saving somebody by killing them. And I
Mhm.
think Chris might have been of the mindset that he was saving his children from growing up with their father murdering their mother.
Right.
You know, that would be something hard to live with. But the thing is, you know, if it was me, I was the child, I would want a chance, you know,
And I
and
could
he didn't give them a chance.
I feel like I don't know if you recall in the police interviews, but Nicole was talking about doing gardening with the girls and, all these plans she had. Um, you know, but can we believe it? We don't know. But I could totally
Well,
see Chris playing the card of like,
she see, and that's where like I start thinking maybe she could have been involved because maybe the plan was to, you know, remove the mother and then she would take over. Um,
right. I
that
mean,
seems
um,
like a logical thing that a crazy person would come up with, you know?
and
It's not logical though, because
and right that the
it
mom
wouldn't work.
and this nice coworker started helping out with the girls and we fell in love. I mean, that kind of theory went through my head too, is that Shanann was the only plan and he was slowly going to move Kessinger into the picture, and then they would all eventually accept her and then he could have this new life with the kids too, and then he could send them off to grandma's for 4 weeks or whatever and have his alone time.
Yeah. See, I don't know that the kids were young enough that it probably wouldn't have like affected them like having a stepmom as much as
Right.
it would have like a teenager getting a stepmom. So, I mean, there's other things that there's many other things that could have happened rather than him murdering his family. I don't care if he thought he was saving them from, you know, growing up horribly because of what happened to their mother, but it's not fair for them to not even get a chance to try.
Right. I always wonder, how did Nate next door not hear anything? Because those girls were allowed. Like, when you watch the videos of them,
Well, the walls are thick, you know.
he said he
You got
heard.
two insulated walls and they're separated by 10 to
Yeah,
15 feet. So you're not going to hear a lot unless the windows are open.
it makes
Uh,
me wonder though if people in that neighborhood are going back now and wondering, did I hear something that night? Or that
yeah.
early morning.
God, I don't know. I don't know what I would do even if I was the neighbor, you know, in a situation like this. It wouldn't be that's like the last thing. I bet it's hard for them to process too.
Absolutely. I think, I have reached out to Nate to do an interview. He doesn't do them. And one of the reasons why is he did have to go on Dr. Oz and kind of admit that he did say that they fought a lot. And he said he kind of did that because he wanted them to take what was going on seriously, because he knew in his gut Chris was not acting right, when
Mhm.
watching the footage. So when he got on Dr. Oz, maybe a couple months later, he said, I just want to clarify, I kind of embellished about how much they fought with each other, and that's not true. But um, Nate does not live there anymore, but his mom lives in that house. And I heard she wrote a book. I've been meaning to look that up. And, it's just crazy to think this neighbor's mom writes a book about the case, but she claims she's had visitations from the girls.
Yeah, that will be an interesting book. I don't believe in that kind of supernatural stuff.
Betty
I'm a
next
very
door.
big skeptic. And, I started out with a ghost channel, so I like ghost stories. I just don't believe in them.
Rabbit Hole brought up Betty next door. She is one of my favorite people that was interviewed. She was really detailed, and you could tell she wanted to get it right. Describing the truck in detail, whether it had the camper top on it and all of the activity in the days prior.
But yeah, I've always wondered why Thrive hasn't been investigated after this. Because
Maybe-
that's the one thing that he changed his whole life, taking that stuff. He was a chubby dude,
Yeah.
and then he started taking Thrive and he lost weight. He also couldn't sleep. He was getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep every night, he said.
Maybe they did a payout. Maybe they were expecting to get sued and threw some money at the Watts.
I mean, are they still around?
Thrive, yeah.
Thrive? See?
Nicole Atkinson
Yeah.
still sells it. She
Wow.
does.
I wouldn't sell it.
I mean, I hate all of that kind of thing, and especially someone who just went through cancer. It's like there's so many things people say this helps this and this and that, and I'm not the type to push anything on anyone, but I feel like that company really did play a pivotal role in pushing Shannon to be so online and
Yeah, I think she was online because she enjoyed it.
we're just Chris couldn't even walk in the door without knowing if the camera was live or not. And that's the lifestyle they promoted, is that you can be rich and work whatever hours you want. But I'll tell you one thing, I feel like that woman worked more hours than a 40-hour job.
Yeah. And I don't think she was making that much money.
No.
I think I read that she might be making like 40 to 60,000, but she wasn't at first.
And it's one of those companies too, because I've had some Thrive people reach out to me. It's one of those companies where you have to buy product up front, and a lot of that product was stored in the Watts basement, and then she would, you would put an order in and she had it, ready to go for you. And then that also, I think, how can you really know if someone is top of sales if they're pre-purchasing the product to sell it? You know what I mean?
Well, if she's buying more, then she's probably selling it.
Right.
Unless she's just buying it all and hoarding it, and then that's an issue. Yeah.
So,
but they were about to lose their house. They were about to, they were having money problems.
Closure.
The money problems, the family feuds, all of it. That's how everything, it just was one thing after another, and they just all added up to one horrible outcome.
Modest Mouse has said, just we need to pray for the families, and I do all the time. In my heart, I do feel like they are at peace. I'm not sure, what your background is, Rob, in that sense of, a spiritual background or anything, but it's, I think about these kids all the time.
Yeah, I think about him a lot too. I think if he just, if I think about it like this, it makes me feel bad. But, if it was an adult that was the only one that got murdered, I probably wouldn't feel so strongly about it, but
Well,
because of the kids being
right.
involved, it hurts everyone. You know, like millions of people found out about this, and they all felt exactly what I felt. You know, and it's different than what the actual family felt, I'm sure, but it's, you know, it's still real. Um,
I just can't get over how one human being has destroyed the lives of so many people. I mean, you extend this out to the first responders who had to retrieve the bodies have had to retire. Dave Baumhauer, the detective, has had to retire. I'm assuming Kissinger is still working, but even Jim, you know, we always say leave Jim alone. Jim probably got fired from his job. I mean, it just goes on and on and on how many people he has affected with his actions.
yeah. And it makes me angry to think that he's like having a good life in his little jail cell with his books and stuff.
And reading stories to the girls. Yeah.
It's I don't think it's enough. I can't say what would be enough, but it's not enough.
Yeah.
But
Just,
anyways, I think I'm gonna have to get going.
no, we're
Try to
good.
see
We're
what-
at 1 hour and 30 minutes. I think we went a lot longer. And I mean,
I hope you enjoyed this discussion. I know we didn't really come to any conclusions, but
we
how
never,
can we?
we never will.
Yeah.
But yeah, give us some feedback in the comments. What would you like us to, you know, cover? We're going to try to make this a regular thing. We both have kiddos, so we have to schedule it. And then also Rob is in Alaska, so we've got a 4-hour time difference between him and I.
Yeah.
But we want to know what you guys want us to cover in the future.
Yeah, I'm working on an Israel Keys story. I had to take a break yesterday from it. That story actually got to me too. That guy is scary, and he murdered somebody here in Anchorage. Kind of crazy.
Oh gosh, Modest Mouse brought up Stephen Paddock, and my brain's gonna explode. Well, we're definitely gonna have to do one on that because Rob and I were talking about that the other day. How it just poof, you never hear about it again.
Yeah.
But all right, well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Please throw some thoughts in the
Make
comments.
sure you're hitting that heart button thing.
Subscribe. I don't think this went on my channel, but what I'm going to do is download it and upload it so that people can rewatch it. But make sure you subscribe to Rob and hit that bell icon so you know the next time we all go live.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Have a good day. Welcome to Timeless Mysteries. Please like and subscribe if you're drawn to tales of dark psychology, twisted crimes, and the fine line between man and monster. You're in the right place.